friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the MC Lars podcast, the bi-weekly long-form podcast where I talk to fellow rappers, musicians, writers, educators, and DIY mavericks about their creative processes and influences. Today is Monday, January 4th, 2021. Happy New Year. This is episode 115. Now, sometimes I talk to people outside of the realm of the tagline for my podcast, but this dude this week, Scott Sholder, is a creative person in that lawyers have to be creative. They have to connect worlds, decipher language, find truth, and these are all things we talk about on this podcast. My dad's career before he became an artist was as a lawyer, as a corporate law lawyer doing mergers and acquisitions. So he's always given me perspective and sometimes legal help as I've built up my MC Lars business. And I really appreciate that. And part of my undergrad plan as an English major was maybe to be pre-law, maybe go to law school, but it didn't work out exactly as I planned because life is random, as the last year has shown us. And so Scott talks a lot about his journey as a music fan, his love of underground DIY music. He talks about how we connected through DJ Rostar, who was a DJ on Adobe Radio, which was one of the original iTunes internet radio stations that played my music a lot. And I met Rostar through my first manager back in the day. But anyway, Scott and I were trying to do this episode for months in real life. And then COVID happened. We've been talking about doing this episode forever, and so I'm excited to finally release it. He works with a law firm called Cowan Debates, Abrahams and Shepherd, and he works as one of the litigation attorneys. So he's a smart dude, and I ask him a lot of hypothetical questions, and it's interesting how, anyone in the entertainment industry, it can be messy when there's money involved. Like bands sometimes break up because there's an issue with contracts. Like I've had people I thought were my friends that I worked with on projects who ended up not being reliable or not, being trustworthy. And it's a hard thing. Sometimes you need a lawyer to sort things out. So it was interesting to talk about this stuff with Scott in the context of black metal bands, where the members actually murder each other, like the repercussions of that in terms of copyrights. We talk about memes. We talk about all sorts of stuff. And we talk about copyright overhaul. And he talks about how it will be a watershed moment one day when they redo the copyright law to help catch up with things like virtual reality and internet, and how the last one was a few years ago. So yeah, Scott's a cool guy. So this is a interview with him. This episode is brought to you by the Patreon Larshan's Holler. If you want to hear my Patreon raps, check out patreon.com/MCLars. I'm currently doing raps about all the movies and TV shows in the Star Wars canon. This week, I'm dropping my Star Wars Rebel song. It's the first one of the year, the first Patreon song of the year, but I have tons of Marvel songs, lots of other Star Wars songs. I did a Narnia EP. There's so much stuff you can only hear if you sign up at patreon.com/MCLars. So shout out to the new ones who signed up recently, Brad, John, and Bob. Shout out to the old ones, Jason, Melvin the Muppet, and Simon. So I asked a question on social media, what is your New Year's resolution? And I got some great responses. So let's go to the phone lines, y'all. I asked a question on social media. The Larsens drop knowledge just like Wikipedia. To think about this or that, let me guess. These are the messages that some of y'all left.
Please leave a message after the tone.
So our first call is from Asif from Shack News. They ran all the Stimulus Games tournaments in 2020, and Shack News is a great website. Asif, what is your New Year's resolution?
Hey, Lars. It's Asif from Shack News and Army Techno. My New Year's resolution is to not get mad at people on the internet as much as I did this year. And then, what's your favorite gaming website and why is it Shack News? Happy New Year.
That's a throwback to when we were doing the tournaments. I'd always be like, what's ICP's favorite album and why is it Great Malenko? Like when you answer the question you're asking to influence the answer. So thank you, man. That was tight. And shout out to Shack News. And I love y'all. It's a great group of homies based in the Bay Area. They do video game reviews, but they have an awesome busy Twitch channel, and they had us play these nerdcore games. Some of you may have caught the tournaments. It was so fun. Nothing but love for them. Okay, our next call is my homie Ryan in Pittsburgh.
What's up, MC Lars? This is Ryan Kelly calling you back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
My New Year's resolution this year is to be a little healthier. I got COVID this year and had some surgeries and whatnot, so I want to be a little healthier and eat healthy this year. You know, because a healthy mind is a healthy body, and a healthy body is a healthy life. And, you know, I got to be around for my little girls, you know, best things in my life. All right. Lars and Larsens, you guys have a wonderful new year. You can hear the littlest one in the background. Can you say hi, MC Lars?
Hi, Lars. Hi, Beth. Hi, Tanner. I love you guys.
Well, that was an unexpected guest appearance from one of Ryan's daughters. Thanks. I didn't know you had COVID, dude. It's crazy hearing about people who have had it, friends, and it's just, oh man, I hope you're doing okay. Eating healthy, that's a good plan. I've been trying to do that too. I'm trying to do intermittent fasting where I stop eating and then I wait 8 hours to eat again. So I'm sorry, no, I wait 16 hours. So I eat within an 8-hour period. It actually gives me more energy. It's just, you're hungry in the morning and you can't snack at night. But it is, when I do it, I feel like I'm in shape. And I've been training to run a marathon. So that is my New Year's resolution. To be healthy too. So thank you for calling in, Ryan. You are a good homie. Okay, so our next caller is from Will in Queens, a comedian and a homie who called in last week. And Will Carey, he's a great comedian. Check it out.
Hey, Lars. This is Will. I'm calling from New York City, specifically Astoria, Queens. My New Year's resolution is to continue to put up my podcast every single week between Awesome and Disaster. See if who else I can get to be on the show. And then I'm also going to try to be a little more I'm going to be more active this year, be a little bit healthier, and just generally try to improve myself in those two avenues. And if it's safe, my band is going to play our first show. All right. Thanks, Lars.
First show, that is tight. And another healthy resolution. That's what's up. Good job, Will. All right. The next call is from Gracie's mom.
Yo, yo, yo. Gracie's mom in the house. My New Year's resolution is to drop 500 pounds of chocolate that I'm not going to eat and continue to be a fabulous mom and be someone's Prince Charming, run away to the islands, and get 1 million degrees that are like bachelor's and master's degrees and be a doctor of the world. I'm calling from my mom's basement and I'm locked down here. Please help.
That is a very busy year. Thank you, Gracie's mom. Okay, we got one more call. This is from Ryan in Ohio.
Yo, this is Ryan calling in from Ohio. My New Year's resolution is to get that COVID-19 vaccination, and then I want to just hug everybody else who got that COVID-19 vaccination in 2021. That is what's up. Much love to everybody.
Thank you, Ryan. Also, check out Huge on Spotify. I have a few students through the MC Lars Lit Hop Academy, and Ryan is one of them, and he's a great rapper and a great dude, so check that out. Okay, let's get into it. This is my interview with Scott Sholder. We're going to end with a song by Dissection, which is a Swedish black metal band, death metal band, actually. And it comes up because we did the interview over Zoom. Scott was rocking one of their hoodies. So I was like, what's the band? So I checked it out. So this song is called Mahakali, about the Hindu goddess. So we're going to play that after the interview. That's just for context. And here we go. All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of the MC Lars podcast. I'm here with Scott Sholder, a lawyer that I've known for a while, peripherally.
Yeah, I'm really excited, man. We've been talking about it since March, I think, and we all know what happened in March, and that our plans to do this in the back conference room of my office got derailed, and so here we are 6 months later, and we're doing it. It's great.
What made you want to go into law, and what made you curious about music law specifically?
Music law is kind of the reason I wanted to go to law school. And then things kind of like went a different direction, came back around to involving some music stuff, recently. So in college, when you and I met, I was a journalism major, and I love writing, and I figured that was a good way to go. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the fact gathering, but I didn't have the same level of joy in doing it that I saw the people on the newspaper, really had. I was the music editor for a while. I was a music writer my first year, and music editor for a couple of years after that of the school paper. And I just didn't get the rush from it that a lot of people did. And I was a little dismayed at that, not really sure what I wanted to do. Thought I wanted to be a music writer, because at my origin is I am just a music guy through and through. That's, some people are film buffs. Music is my thing. It's my passion and my love. And it evolved from kind of pop punk and mainstream rock and roll into heavy metal and like the deepest of underground crazy music. My tastes are not palatable to anybody else in my household except me. That obsession and kind of real interest in that culture made me want to do something in music. And so music journalism was step one. I decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then I ended up taking a course in communications law at American University with my professor was a shout out to Ashley Messenger at NPR. She was my professor. She's a lawyer, in-house lawyer at NPR. And her class on communications law, First Amendment, privacy, a little bit of intellectual property, that kind of stuff is really what made a light bulb go off. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And from there, I just said, all right, I'm applying to law school, and let's see if I can get into the music business. And my career didn't go directly that way. I ended up doing a much more traditional kind of litigation-focused law school path. Go to law school, clerk for a judge for a couple of years, go to a big law firm, and then transition to a boutique. So it took me many years to get to doing the work that I wanted to do. But here I am, and I'm very happy doing it.
What is the name of your firm? What does it specialize in specifically, if anyone listening is curious about that?
Sure. So the firm is Cowan, Debates, Abrahams, and Shepherd. It is an entertainment and media boutique law firm in the Flatiron district of Manhattan. At least that's where the physical office is. Now we're all kind of scattered, but that's where our home base is. And we handle all kinds of different matters across the entertainment and media industry, from music to streaming television to film, theater, new technology, new media. We have a group that does entertainment and media deal work, lots of stuff like film financing and rights acquisitions and rights clearances and things like that. A group that deals with a lot of kind of tech startups doing corporate formations and financings and drafting contracts and things like that. And then my group is the litigation group, which nobody wants to come to us unless something goes wrong. You never want to have to call the litigator in, but we handle disputes when things become contentious. We're there either defending or bringing claims in court through arbitration or mediation, and that those fall into different buckets. There's kind of your media and entertainment business disputes, and then copyright and trademark disputes. Sometimes right of publicity, defamation defense, First Amendment type work. And that these types of cases happen within the media and entertainment industries, and sometimes outside of that when it's copyright and trademark. Sometimes they're not media specific clients, but by and large, the the bread and butter of our firm is media and entertainment.
That means that as content evolves and the format changes, you stay sharp and you're able to keep engaging with your clients and like stay relevant as like a label needs to be relevant. Like as a law firm, you need to be working on laws that are like of the moment and probably, I guess, anticipating what's going to happen in the future, being ready.
Yeah, totally. The way the entertainment industry has evolved, to really becoming more of a digital streaming kind of over the top service. I mean, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max and HBO Go, Amazon Prime, all of these platforms are so recent. They've and have exploded in such big ways in recent years that the deal terms change, the contracts change, the considerations for what rights you need and what business terms are acceptable have changed. So yeah, you really need to, on the business side, you really need to stay on top of things. And then on the, more kind of litigation and risk management side, the law itself doesn't really evolve all that much. I mean, the Copyright and Trademark Acts haven't really changed tremendously in recent years, except for the Music Modernization Act, which deals with some very specific technical things in the music business, but the interpretations do. I mean, courts come down with decisions all the time that change the way you interpret laws as applied to new technologies, and that's kind of the way it has to be until the legislatures pass laws that catch up with the technology. The technology is almost always outpacing the law. So it's a matter of interpreting it and trying to figure out how to mold it to new situations when the language didn't necessarily contemplate where you are in that moment technologically.
You have to be informed about these things, but also, Scott, there's I feel like this whole generation, and with hip hop specifically, of this, well, put it on SoundCloud, it's a remix, it's fine. But people don't know this. Even if you give something away, you can't technically remix something and give it away, technically, right?
You mean like remixing somebody else's song and then just putting it up there without permission?
But yeah, like if you took Hey Jude and rapped over it, and then someone who owns the copyright didn't like that, like let's say you did a Flat Earth song over Hey Jude, Paul McCartney could sue you, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what a lot of people, and this applies to music, but it also applies to other things, visual art and literature and pretty much all the art forms. I think people assume that there is a quantity that is okay to just use. Oh, if it's less than 10 seconds long, I can use the sample without paying for it. Or if I'm just taking the chorus and sampling that, then that's okay. People think that they can fair use something, and they use fair use as like a verb. Fair use is not a verb. It is a very nuanced, gray, mushy legal test that depends on the facts. And and just because you give something away for free or give credit to somebody, credit to Paul McCartney for songwriting on this, that doesn't do it. That's not gonna cut it, especially if a copyright owner is particularly aggressive or litigious. They will enforce their rights. It happens all the time. I mean, this is where a lot of these disputes come up, particularly in the entertainment business, is that people don't paper things because either they don't have a lawyer or don't know about the ramifications of not putting things in writing, or they don't think it's necessary. They've worked with the person before, they trust them, they're friends. This person would never do anything to hurt me, and that's I've seen that story more times than I wish to try to count. And it's unfortunate, and it ends up costing a lot of money. So I think that the smart thing to do is to, obviously, if you can, means are a question. If you don't have the means to do something, then you just have to go for it, I guess. But if you have the means to paper it and to have a lawyer look at it and to give some more thought to the business side of things up front, it could save a lot of headache in the long run.
That's important. And I think anyone listening, content creators, people who are collaborating, keep that in mind, especially in this post-COVID world where we're collaborating remotely, and there's more of an opportunity to have this digital trail. Like having an email, I'm sure you've come across this without naming specific cases, like one email or a few emails can like break a whole case, I would imagine.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, and since email became the primary mode of communication, email has been like the big treasure trove of documents in litigation. I mean, you get access to somebody's entire email box. American style discovery is very invasive and extensive, and you get to read a ton of emails. And sometimes there's a couple that really just are the deal breaker or the case maker for you. You really can. It's, talk about a smoking gun. There can be a smoking gun email, but thinking about it from more of a transactional perspective, having that email trail is helpful in establishing what the party's intent was, and there are certain circumstances you may even be able to say that there's a contract through email exchange. I've seen that before. So yeah, having stuff in writing is important.
What do you do for fun, and how do you remind yourself that you still love music?
Well, I mean, music still is my number one go-to if I have spare time. Anytime I'm out, like if I'm doing errands, if I'm walking the dog, or if I have to take the trash out or whatever, headphones on. What are the new releases this week? And try to spend a little bit of time absorbing some of that great content. So I really do default to listening to music, and like I said, my tastes are not exactly mainstream, and so I check out a lot of the metal blogs, and I subscribe to Decibel magazine. I read that and get all my new my new recommendations there, and I'm always like, okay, I dog ear the pages of the bands that I'm interested in, and then I go on my my phone and I find it, go into my streaming app and figure out what I like and what I don't, add that to my library. So I'm always checking out music, always listening to music. Audiobooks, I try to listen to as much audiobook content and as I can, and read. There's less time to sit down and read a book when I can put on an audiobook and, again, go do chores and do whatever I need to do around the house, and knock out some books and short stories that way. And I write. It's more of a recent hobby. I've started doing some creative writing just to keep my mind in a little bit more of an artistic space, and just I get some satisfaction that way. Lawyering can be creative in some ways, but it's often very technical and can be dry and can be contentious and stressful, and all those things together lead me to really need an outlet. And music and books and writing are kind of the top things that I do. I try to exercise when I can, go running, and you need to stay healthy too. But I find that I'm able to separate the business from the content. I do a lot of my work, at least recently, has been more in visual arts. I've had a couple of music cases. I have a couple that are kind of semi-active, but I haven't done a ton of that litigation. But it's so different from the content itself, right? So if I'm thinking about what kind of licenses somebody would need, or whether a client did something without permission and what's their level of risk, I can still appreciate listening to music, because that knowledge is so different from the side of your brain that's engaged by the artistic content. So I'm happy that this isn't I'm not in the type of situation where that's ruined for me.
In working in this litigation field, do you feel like artists are kinder than you thought before you became a lawyer and have better intentions, or do you now see kind of like the negative side of the business side of art and how people can be sneaky and ruthless? Or does that kind of not matter because every case is different?
People really, really care about their art.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they care deeply about it and they want to protect it. Whether they're the ones pursuing a claim or whether they're the ones defending against a claim, there is a real deep respect for the content. And I think a lot of the people, at least the ones that I'm representing when they're on the defense side are never doing anything maliciously. It's not like they're taking something and using it and going, haha, I got away with not having to pay for this. It's a lot of times it's, the misconceptions about things on the internet. It's, if it's on the internet, I can use it, or this must be fair use because blah, blah, blah. It's never, I won't say never, but I can't remember anything, at least in recent years, that anybody did anything on purpose, at least the ones that I'm representing. I think what you see is, like I said, artists care very deeply about their work and are very defensive of their creations. I don't think I've been surprised at any negativity. I think a lot of the passion comes from that deep level of care for their work. But what I have seen is the disparity in power and money is often disconcerting, because when you're representing a client that is not a major corporation and is kind of staring down the barrel of, a gun held by a major corporation saying, you need to pay us this, or, we'll litigate for the next 3 years. That's a really tough situation to be in. And I don't think and I'm not, going to name any companies, but I don't think the big companies like that mean to do it out of cruelty. I think they need to enforce their rights. They have valuable intellectual property, and I totally respect that. And that needs to be protected. But the degree to which it's taken sometimes in the posturing and the lengths that certain parties will go just to make a point, to make an example out of a content user who may have made a mistake somewhere along the line, has been a little bit disappointing to me. And it's hard to advise clients on that, because they're like, well, what, but how is it worth, how are they asking me for this much money when they only would have earned such and such? Why can't we settle for less? And it's kind of like, they're the ones exerting all the pressure, and you can only do so much to get them to be reasonable.
And a part of it is like, if it gets out that they were exerting this pressure, then people are less likely to violate the copyright laws or whatever. So it's setting an example, right?
That's exactly right. And I've seen a couple of instances where that's exactly the strategy is, you'll pay us this or we'll make an example out of you publicly.
Right.
And some companies have the power and will to do that. And some others of the same size and the same, with the same size war chest, are much more willing to be like, okay, let's get into business together. Let's do something that works for both of us and is more productive. And, it's hard to tell which one you're going to deal with unless you've dealt with them a number of times in the past and know the patterns. But that can be tough. It's a tough part of this business.
It's really, you in your field, it's a protracted game of chess where you have to know about also the past history of media, anticipate the future, look at other cases of references. It's like you're constantly playing this almost like Dungeons and Dragons strategy game that's like forever unfolding. And it must be interesting because it's probably, you never know what to expect, and it's never boring being a media lawyer, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. There are things that can be somewhat rote, and you kind of know where this is going, and here's how it'll play out. But a lot of the times, especially when you're actually in court and you have a judge, even if you've been before that judge before, you don't know how they're necessarily going to rule on a particular motion, or how they're going to decide a case. Are they going to throw it out? Are they going to let it continue? And you never know what you're going to find in the documents. You never know what somebody's going to say in a deposition. I had somebody who had a very elaborate story in their complaint about what had happened in a particular instance. And when I asked her at her deposition to tell me about it, she said, I have no recollection of that.
What?
And I was just kind of like, okay, what? And I had to just stop for a minute and kind of ask myself, like, okay, what do I even do with that?
Yeah, because the case was relying on her remembering, right?
You can't make this stuff up sometimes. So yeah, it's definitely never boring. That's for sure.
Are you familiar with a book called Lords of Chaos?
Oh yes.
Okay, so this is definitely a pivot, but when you talk about the dynamics that can go behind the scenes with like groups of people, that story is crazy,
isn't it?
And when I first heard that story, and then it made me curious about all the different artists. So here's my question for you. In the situation of a band like that, who could own the trademark to Mayhem? Because I know they've had so many iterations of the band. Like, how would a lawyer like you determine who is the copyright owner of that project, especially when members die, members are killing each other? Like, how would you deal with a case like that?
Oh man, that's so funny because you don't see. Black metal is a very it's a notorious subgenre, and there's a lot of stereotypes about it, and I think a lot of that arose out of Mayhem and the Norwegian scene with the church burnings and band members killing each other and whatever. So it's different in every country. So a band like that in Norway, who would own the trademark of the name would largely depend on what the laws are in Norway. But in the U.S., it's really all about use. So you don't have to register a mark to be able to protect it as long as you're using it, and you have to use it kind of in a commercial way in connection with the goods and services that you're offering. So a lot of times if somebody stops using it, let's say the band members split off and two of them are using the name and one of them has kind of gone off and done his own thing, and then he decides later he wants to reform a band of the same name, arguably the ones who are using it are the ones who have the continuing rights. It's really the U.S. trademark system is really all about continued use and consistent use to designate, to use a mark as designating you as the source of your goods or the source of your music. But the question arises: is there a contract? Was there ever any agreement, oral or written, about who would own it? Is it registered, and was the registration up? Was it kept up? Was it abandoned by anybody? Did somebody assign it? There's all kinds of questions that go into it, but it'll be very fact specific.
You talk about how it's a notorious subgenre, and with black metal, it seems like that story transcends people's actual awareness of naming any Mayhem songs, right? Like what's one of the songs, The Freezing Moon or something? That's one of the only songs I know. And but I know all about the story about that, about what happened. And it's interesting because, okay, so when the inter-band dynamic is such that it's so fraught that then gives the brand longevity and publicity, right? It's like in that situation, could you argue potentially, this is like a ridiculous hypothetical, that whoever caused the most fraught dynamic has more of a claim to the name because the controversy came from that dynamic? Or is that is that ridiculous?
It would be a novel argument, I think. It kind of goes back to the question of use. Like, what are they using it in connection with? At least, under U.S. law, if you're using the band name, let's say, for Mayhem, for example, in connection with providing music, recorded music, live music, streaming music, whatever, the controversy and the violence and the shenanigans are not necessarily related to the service that you're off. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. I think the big question would be who's using it in connection with music.
Right, okay.
But that would be a super interesting question under other systems of law around the world. Maybe that would be a consideration. I don't know.
There's this notion that truth might not exist anymore, but you're in the business of finding that and proving that it does. And that's really refreshing and important. And I don't know, that's why it's interesting to talk about this stuff with you, because Scott, do you think truth exists?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Look, there are multiple sides to every story. Everyone says, oh, there's, two sides to every story. I think there's probably a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But at the core, there is something that happened. And I think you can get as close to that as humanly possible. And there are facts. There are, people don't make up their own facts as much as certain people would like us to believe.
Right.
facts are what they are. They're provable. There's documentation. Sometimes it's subject to interpretation. Sometimes, what those facts are is colored by people's recollections. And a lot of times, I'm not a, neurologist or scientist of any sort, but at least in my experience, a lot of times your memories are colored by experience and what you believe happened. So there is some variation in terms of, that's the memory that's in my head. Maybe it's not the exact same as somebody else who was there. You've got 3 people watching an event. Everybody's going to have a slightly different take on it, but there are certain basic facts at the heart of that event that I think are indisputable. Part
of your job becomes deciphering from all the different perspectives what actually happened and proving that, right? I mean, that's the core of the law.
Yeah, it is. It's really a fact-finding exercise, and obviously you need to know how to apply the law and how to mold the arguments and be persuasive, write persuasively, speak persuasively. Litigating is a very different kind of art form from drafting and negotiating a merger or something like that. But yeah, it really is about figuring out what the facts are and kind of understanding what happened and who did what and who said what. And unfortunately, you have to then leave it up to somebody else to make the decision, whether it's a judge or a jury. But, the facts are there.
Is intent a valuable thing to consider, or does intent not matter when it comes to copyright violations?
It doesn't matter for purposes of liability, right? So copyright infringement is what's known as a strict liability. I don't know whether you call it a tort or a offense. It's not. It's a civil offense. There are criminal aspects of copyright infringement in certain contexts, but that's not what we're talking about here. So you don't have to have intended to do anything in order to be liable for infringement. Where intent comes in is if you infringed willfully under certain circumstances. A rights owner might be entitled to enhanced damages. If they deem that you did it on purpose and intentionally. And so that's really where it comes in. But there are also technicalities that need to be met in order to even get to that point.
If someone makes a meme, right, that has the Drake, like the Drake meme where he's like pushing away and then he's like thumbs up.
Yeah.
Is that illegal, first of all? And could someone like Drake hypothetically have a case and sue someone who made that meme happen? And then if it gets to a point where it's like everyone's posting it, like what power would someone like that have?
Yeah. Memes are really interesting. I'm not sure if there has been litigation over those. It wouldn't surprise me if there had been. But so whether something is per se unlawful, I tend to not go there and saying, everything is, this definitely would be okay or this definitely wouldn't be okay. I think you get in with things like memes. I think you get into territory of fair use.
Okay.
And that's where you really need to figure out how much did the person use of so let's say it's a photograph of Drake. So Drake doesn't necessarily own that photograph. The photographer does, or whoever that photographer sold it to. So there's one rights holder. It's, who owns the photograph. How much was done to transform the photograph to have a different purpose from its original purpose, which, is depicting Drake, whether it be in, tabloids or, the music press or whatever. Did it hurt the licensing market for it? Those are the kinds of factors that you consider. And it's, again, going back to what we were talking about before about everything being fact specific. You want to talk about fact specific. Fair use is like one of the biggest pieces of copyright law that is totally fact specific. Almost no two cases are going to be the same. But that kind of could potentially cover you on the copyright side. Does Drake have a claim for using his likeness? Regardless of who owns the copyright, that's kind of the other question, is if you're depicting a recognizable person, they might have a commercial interest in the value of their appearance. For something like a meme, it's hard for me to believe that there would be a lot of money to be made from that. I don't think it's necessarily usurping a commercial opportunity. Memes are not commercial uses, but The thing about the right of privacy and publicity is that it's different. It differs by state.
Okay. Oh, wow.
There's no federal right of publicity law. So it all depends on where the user is and where Drake is, and what the context of the use was. Was it some states require a commercial use and some don't? Some require advertising or trade use, and some have different language. So that will depend on what law applies, and that can often be a complicated analysis. But to your point about the kind of proliferation of these things all over the internet and what can somebody do about it, that's really a question of enforcement. Like, does an artist like Drake or Taylor Swift or whoever is depicted in the meme, do they really want to start enforcing their rights against things like that? I don't know.
The Streisand effect. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
That term?
Yes, for sure.
You try to squelch it, then it's just going to be like, this is the thing Drake tried to stop from coming out.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think that's a practical consideration for a lot of celebrities. How is this going to impact my image? And look, if you're potentially waiving rights or prejudicing yourself by not policing your rights, then there's something to be said for going after egregious offenses. But I mean, the internet is so vast and social media is so vast that I think it's impossible to police everything, and it's really like a game of whack-a-mole. A lot of times, you take down one thing, and then another same thing pops up on a different platform or through a different server or something like that. So, rights owners really kind of need to decide where to allocate their resources a lot, and whether it's really that important to chase things like that.
It's like we were talking about. It's like a game of chess, right? It's like you, as a rights holder, you probably have to think like that. And do you think, okay, where your career is going to be in 5 years, 10 years? Like, do you think you'll be doing different things, or do you think you'll just be a different version of the same process? I wanted to end on that.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of my own career, I from where I'm sitting now, I see it. I see myself being a more, advanced and more experienced version of myself in a slightly different and more advanced world. I'm very happy doing what I do. I want to continue, in this line of work. I enjoy it, and I would hope that my career would just continue to move as it has been, and represent clients in all these different areas. I'm on both sides of a lot of things. I do a lot of defense work, but I also do some plaintiff side or content owner side work, and it's enjoyable. And I would like to continue doing that, especially as these art forms and technology advance. There's a lot of developments in VR and AR and interactive content that I think is going to lead to really interesting legal issues, and could potentially at some point, if Congress ever gets around to it, changing the copyright law. And I think it's well overdue. The last one was passed in the late 70s. With some modifications in the late 90s to account for digital content, but it hasn't really been overhauled since then, and I think it needs to catch up with the times. And that'll be really interesting. That'll be like a watershed day in my career when a new Copyright Act is passed, and everything will change, and it'll be really interesting to kind of start over with a new body of creating a new body of case law. So I think that'll be really interesting. In terms of the future of music and content, it's interesting. I think a lot about Download the Song when I think about this question, because you had said music was a product and now it's a service, and that's really true. I mean, it's you're not so much buying a product anymore as you have access to a massive library of content, and then the products are really on kind of the merch side, and special vinyl releases and cassettes and
tickets, right? Tickets to shows. Oh yeah, what's that hoodie you're wearing? That's tight.
That's Dissection. That's another black metal band.
That's tight logo.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about these bands is the logos and the artwork are just awesome. But I think the product aspect of it has really moved towards towards things like that, whereas the music itself is part of the service that you pay for, and that's going to have that whole system is controversial. A lot of artists think they're not paid enough through services like Spotify and Google Play and all the other streaming services that are out there. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and whether there's any further legislation or alternative services. I think music has become a lot more DIY, and probably will continue that way. Which is not to say that you don't need labels. Labels, I think, will always be there in some capacity. But with Bandcamp and SoundCloud and there's this very kind of new DIY ethic to a lot of this. Recording, and you can record on GarageBand or Logic or whatever, and make your own content. It's just a matter of marketing it. So I think things will probably continue to go that way as the technology increases and becomes even more sophisticated. And then media itself is really, we're kind of in a golden age of TV, and there are so many streaming services out there, and they keep coming out with more of them in different variants. Quibi is, short form. That's kind of like a new thing, and has gotten a lot of attention. And with COVID, I think you're still seeing a lot of content creation. Unfortunately, a lot of productions have had to stop because of it. But the deals are still being made. The rights are still being acquired. Content is still coming out, and I think the way things are made could potentially change. But I don't think there's necessarily going to be much of a slowdown. There's so much demand for it. People are at home and probably have a lot more time to consume content. I think we're in an age where the content will just continue to come, and the creators will find a way to make it. Ideally in conjunction with keeping everyone as safe as possible. But maybe they'll find ways to create content remotely too. That a lot of shows have done that, but who knows? There could be a way to make movies that way too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the technology will shift and the laws will shift and evolve. And I guess the hope is that we don't become fatigued from our screens, right? And I wonder if you have that sometimes, just all day, especially with all the stuff you have to read, and now like doing this podcast, like you're always having to be engaged with the screen, and that we don't know the long-term effects of that yet. I
think it has probably gotten worse with with the pandemic, because you're not having in-person meetings, you're having Zoom meetings. And I have, sometimes I'll have catch-ups with friends from college or friends from high school on Zoom, and every so often one of them will say, I'm not joining tonight. I've been on Zoom all day. I can't spend another half an hour on the computer. So I think that is taking a toll on people, but I don't know. People seem pretty dedicated to their content. Yeah. I think a computer screen is a little bit different from the TV screen, and I don't think the content's going anywhere because of that. But I do think that it'll be interesting to see where this whole screen fatigue and phenomenon goes, and like what's the long-term impact on people's brains and children's brain development, and kids going to Zoom school. It's all very strange. We live in a really strange time. We're living in the future. It got sped up. Yeah, right. No, I've never seen a sci-fi movie that predicted this. This podcast has been very useful, and thank you for all the information and for following my kind of disjuncted questions, because I think there's a lot of content creators who listen to this podcast, and I think it's been helpful, man, and I appreciate your time. So thank you, man. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was awesome talking to you. Are you on social media at all? If people want to just follow you or and your thoughts and stuff like that? Twitter is just, I think it's just Scott Sholder. Yeah, Instagram's the same, just at Scott Sholder. Follow Scott for more information. And thank you, man. This has been tight. Thanks, Lars. Appreciate it.
that was Dissection. Thank you again, Scott. A great interview. We will be back in 2 weeks on Martin Luther King Day. That is January 18th for episode number 116 with Peter Agostin, who is friends or was friends with MF Doom and put out a lot of his early records. And we talk about his career as an agent, as a producer, as a DJ. Just interesting dude who got his start in Northern California. So check that out next episode. Thanks again, Scott. We'll see you then. Peace.